Low milk supply is a common concern for most first-time parents, so today we're going to discuss the most common mistakes to avoid in the first weeks of breastfeeding. My name is Jamie, I'm a midwife, I've been attending births for over a decade. In order to understand low milk supply, it's important to understand what happens in the first few days and weeks following birth. Initially, the body doesn't produce milk, it produces colostrum, and it is in small amounts, but that small amount of food is really nutrient dense and thick and exactly what the baby needs. So it's not uncommon for moms to think their milk supply is low because they aren't producing a lot, when in fact the milk typically comes in around day 3, and it's usually a gradual process that you don't all of a sudden notice your milk is in, but there are signs that it is coming in, such as the baby is producing more wet and poopy diapers, you're hearing the baby swallow, you're seeing a transition in the color of poop from black tarry meconium to green to then breastfed yellow, typically by the end of the week. It is common for babies to lose weight in those first couple days after birth. It is expected that they should be up to birth weight between weeks 1 and 2 post-birth. So if you have given birth and then you're leaving the hospital and realize the baby is under that birth weight, that is totally normal. The baby has extra fat to lose during that time. Signs that you do have low milk supply in that first week is the baby is not having lots of wet and poopy diapers. Now, the first day or two, it's actually pretty common that the baby only has 1 or 2 wet diapers, and it may be that they pass a lot of meconium. Sometimes parents notice there may be a gap of a day or two between when the body has cleared out all the meconium that has been in the baby prior to birth, and then once the body starts making its own poop. So that is not uncommon around day 3 or 4 as the milk comes in, but you should still notice the number of wet diapers increasing. Moving on to the biggest mistakes that can affect the milk supply. The first is initially after the baby is born, it's important to latch the baby on within the first hour of birth. It does not need to be immediately after birth, but within that first hour of being born. If the baby cannot latch, maybe it's gone to the NICU or it's just not interested in nursing within that first hour, it's important to hand express or pump milk so your body understands it's time to start producing milk. Once the body has released the placenta, all those hormone receptors that were previously getting hormones from the placenta are open and waiting for the signal from the body by the baby latching on or stimulating nursing to understand it's now time to start producing milk because now the baby is on the outside of the body. Nursing is a supply and demand system, so the body makes as much milk as the baby is telling the body to make. Another common mistake is giving the baby formula early on. Probably in exhaustion, in sleep deprivation, and a fussy baby, it's not uncommon to think that the baby is just not satisfied by the milk that it is getting from nursing. Babies are fussy for a lot of reasons, and it's not uncommon that the first day or two the baby is really tired because they've just gone through birth. They're exhausted. It's not that they were satisfied and they're fussy now because they're not. It's part of the baby adjusting to being outside of the womb, not because they're hungry. But when a parent is sleep deprived and exhausted and a baby is fussy, it's easy to think that maybe that baby is just hungry and needs formula. If you're giving the baby formula during that time, the body is not getting the message that it needs to produce milk to feed the baby, and so it is starting the cycle of underproducing. If you need to give the baby formula for whatever reason, sometimes there are valid reasons to give the baby's formula. Jaundice, they're in the NICU, you're unable to nurse them. It's important to pump during that time to let your body know the baby is eating, even if it's not from you. The last common mistake we're going to go over today is not feeding the baby on demand. Some parents have this idea that babies are supposed to be on a schedule, especially if at the hospital they're having you feed the baby every 2 hours. It's easy to mistaken that the baby needs to be on a rigorous routine versus looking for hunger cues from the baby that they are actually hungry. Sometimes the baby wants to cluster feed for a couple hours. Sometimes they'll nurse and be satisfied for an hour or two until the next nursing session. It's not always consistent, it's not predictable, and it's not going to be possible to schedule them early on. So trying to get a newborn on a schedule is likely going to affect your body's ability to produce milk for that newborn. If you're worried about supply early on, the important thing to do is stay skin to skin with that baby, let them nurse as often and as frequently as they want, and if you have any concerns about your ability to produce enough milk for that baby, don't hesitate to get in touch with a lactation consultant or the pediatrician to discuss if your baby is showing signs of dehydration and not gaining adequate weight. Hope that helps.